wait till the beat go in.
What's up, guys? Nick Papaluzio here with another episode of the Real Estate Library, and we are on part 5 of the allocation of costs. In other words, who pays for what? So the last 4 sections we talked about the items in the contract that you would write when you're writing your contract. You would check the boxes and clarify that on your purchase agreement. I'm going to cover kind of everything in this episode. Some of the things that we talked about before, some of the things that we haven't talked about yet, who's going to kind of have to pay for it. So before I begin, one thing I want to mention is that by default in the California Association of Realtor purchase contract, if you're using a realtor, you're more than likely going to be using this contract. By default, the buyer is buying the property in as-is condition, so the seller is not responsible to pay for anything unless it's agreed upon between both parties. And that makes sense too, because the seller's selling the property. Hey, look, I know everything about the property. I'm selling it. The buyer's walking in saying, hey, I don't know anything about the property. I need to do all my research, and if there's anything I want to change, it's my responsibility. Don't let that scare you, because you can negotiate. Almost every single deal we have, the buyer asks for something and the seller will help out with something reasonable. So there's a lot of negotiations that can be had. Don't let that scare you, but just know that by default, the seller doesn't have to help you, but you do have the option to back out of the contract if they don't want to help. So jumping in, the seller is going to be responsible for half of the escrow fees. Typically in our area, they pay for title fees. Typically in our area, they pay for all of the realtor commissions, and I think that's pretty much countrywide. If you have an agent and you're a buyer and they're asking you to pay for something, I would question that. But for the seller, typically you pay for the commissions, and then you pay for the transfer fees, the transfer tax for the city or the county. As the buyer, you're pretty much responsible for everything else. So the other half of escrow fees, you're responsible for home warranty if you want one, any inspections if you want inspections, the appraisal, which if you're getting a loan, you have to get that, and your loan fees. You're going to be responsible for all that. And then if anything comes up in inspection reports that you want repaired, by default, remember, that is your responsibility. Don't be afraid to ask the seller if there's things that are reasonable that you feel, hey, look, really, we shouldn't have to move into a house with a broken water heater or a leaking sink or something like that. Absolutely ask away. And really, if it's something small, ask anyways. If you really feel like you want to ask them, some sellers are more than willing to pay for some things that they might not have known about, and they want to make sure that the buyer's taken care of. Or your seller might say, hey, look, you're buying it as is. We don't want to help with anything. But that's where you make the decision, is it worth it? So I hope that helps, guys. Leave a comment or any questions that you have below, and subscribe to the channel for more updates. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.
I'ma wait till the beat go in.